Hey, I'm here at the National Packard Museum in Warren, Ohio. That's a little bit to the southeast of Cleveland. Anyway, they have a great collection of Packards in here, or so I'm told. I've never actually been. So let's go in and check out and see what they've got. So, in the 1890s, James Packard was a major shareholder in the Winton Car Company. He made several suggestions about improving the car, but the owner, Alexander Winton, says, hey, if you think you can go build a better car, you go ahead and do that. James Packard did, and in 1899 organized the New York and Ohio Automobile Company. What we're looking at here is the 10th car that was produced. This is a New York and Ohio company 1900 Model B. There you can see the tiller steering. The body is actually made by a local carriage company, and this is a carriage body style. This is called a do-si-do, which means back to back. There you can see the back seat passengers face backwards, and this is something that is actually more common in carriages at the time. By 1902, the company had produced this upscale Model F. You've heard me talk on this channel before about acetylene tanks that produce gas for headlights. Well, the headlight here is very large because it has its own acetylene tank built in just behind the light. Something like this is referred to as a self-generating headlight. You can see we actually have a steering wheel now, although we're still right-hand drive. This is a hand crank engine. There you see the crank down on the side, so you'd stand over to the side. This is a rear entrance tonneau. You can see the whole back seats can come off. You can see the seam there that would turn this into a two-seat roadster at your option. Around back, you can see the little door, that's the rear entrance, where you can get into the back seats. Here's another Model F without the rear seat so you can see what it could look like. This one is actually a copy of a famous Packard called Old Pacific that completed a transcontinental run. By 1903, the company was reorganized as the Packard Motor Car Company. Let's take a look at the engine here. This is from 1903. This is a big single-cylinder engine with a gigantic cylinder on there. You can see the oiler up on top there. This is a total loss oil system, which means that you fill that little oiler up there with oil. It drips down onto the engine and then eventually down onto the road. So all the oil is lost. Every now and again, you have to refill that little oiler. We've got a big giant flywheel and chain drive. Looking at this pair of 1910s, you can see that Packard has moved very much upscale. This is a larger Model 30 and a smaller Model 18, both from 1910. Take a look at the radiator shape, sort of a tombstone shape. This pattern is repeated on Packards as a design feature for many, many years, so you're going to see this tombstone radiator repeated again and again as we move along. By the time these 1926 and 1931 cars were produced, Packard had established itself as one of America's preeminent luxury cars, as evidenced by this dual cowl Phaeton, just a beautiful car here. The 1939 parked next door here features a powerful V12 engine. That is right, that is a V12 under the hood. And you can see the same Packard tombstone-shaped grille. The 1935 next to it is just a really nice-looking roadster. Next up, we've got this really snappy-looking 1937 business coupe. This is only one of 4 of these that are known to exist, but it's a really nice-looking car. I'm kind of partial to business coupes. Packard got into marine engines in a big way, as evidenced by this Sky Power V8. During the war years, they got the contract to supply engines like this V12 engine for a PT boat. Each PT boat used 3 of those. They continued making marine engines all the way up until the very end in 1956. The museum has this nice 1953 Packard Jr. This is an ambulance conversion by Henny. You can see that this was used by the United States Air Force from 1953. And this car served at the Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma. Just kind of a neat-looking car here. Speaking of neat cars, here's another 53. This one is a replica of Cecil Hayes' AAA racing car. AAA rules maintained that the cars had to be maintained in strictly stock configuration, right down to the tires. Taking a step back, we've got this 1929 five-passenger sedan. Packard's chief rival was Cadillac over at GM, and in 1929 they actually outsold Cadillac by over 11,000 cars. So Packard was the major player in the United States for luxury cars at this time. Speaking of luxury cars, let's just take a moment to drink in this 1936 Packard 120. Believe it or not, the Packard 120 is actually the lower priced model. The 120 had been introduced a year earlier to kind of save Packard from the Depression, and it actually worked. This what we're looking at right now is a 1934 Packard Roadster, also a very nice car. There's the classically styled instrument panel there. This Roadster actually has roll-up windows and a nice tight-fitting top to keep you out of the weather. It has a rumble seat. Actually, both of these cars do. The 1934, the rumble seat is open. And around back, you can see the luggage rack. On the 34, there's a nice traveling trunk there. Looking back on the 36, you can see the just tremendous amount of style built into this. Even though this is the lower priced model, it's actually a highly optioned car. On the back here, you can see the steps built into the fender that will get you up into the rumble seat. Moving just 1 year newer, we have a 1937 Packard V12 rumble seat Roadster. Yes, that is a powerful V12 in there. This is the height of American luxury in 1937. We have dual side mount spare tires, accessory driving lights, accessory dual rear view mirrors. This is looking fantastic in the black with the red leather interior. Every part of this car is just the height of American luxury. Very nice instrument panel. As we pan down, it's going to be a little bit hard to see, but there's a small door just behind the driver's door there. That is a golf bag door, and this car has two of them, one on each side. So if you have money and you're going golfing with a friend, this is the car. Over here, we've got a 1936 Packard 8, and over next to that, we've got a 1940 Packard 110. That's actually only a six-cylinder engine in there. The 110 was an even lower priced series that was designed to be price competitive against the likes of Buick, and actually ended up being a very good seller for Packard. Here's a 1948 seven-passenger sedan. And you can see even in 1948, we still have that tombstone grille motif, the same motif that you saw in those 1910s. This particular car was used by the Bellevue Hotel in Washington, D.C. as a limousine for 30-plus years around the Washington, D.C. area. Next up, we have a show car. This is a 1951 Packard Pan American. This was shown in New York in 1952. The body was built by Henny. Those are the same people that did that ambulance that I showed you earlier. This particular one was then driven by Ed McCauley, Packard's chief stylist for many years, and the instrument panel was updated with 1955 instrumentation. Some of the styling cues here would show up on later Packards. The whole styling here was sort of the inspiration for the 1953 Packard Caribbean. After this, Packard did produce 5 more Pan Americans for the car show circuit, but this is a really nice car. Here's a 1955 Packard Caribbean. This is just an absolutely gorgeous car and was originally bought by none other than Howard Hughes for his future wife, Jean Peters, but just a gorgeous car. Packard had developed an all-electronic push-button transmission. Here's a little close-up of what that actually looks like for your gear selector. Here's another Packard Caribbean. This one is a 1956 in the new hardtop configuration. Unfortunately, cars like this, although nice, were a little too late for Packard. They didn't have the cash reserves of the big three, so throughout the 1950s they were in steady decline, and things like the development of the automatic transmission cost them money that they just didn't have. Here's a 1956 Packard Executive. Once again, one of the last true Packard cars. By this time, Packard was looking at a merger with Studebaker to try and save both companies, which were on the ropes. After 1956, Packard continued for a couple of more years, but they were really little more than rebadged Studebakers. There wasn't anything like this 1956 Packard Clipper. I always liked the Clipper because it's got this neat ship's wheel logo. It's very nautical. Another Packard from the last year of Detroit production is this 56 Packard Patrician. But it wasn't quite over for Packard. Even as the last of the cars rolled off the line, they still had another division. Packard wiring harnesses and cables for automotive applications continued. For years and years, eventually they were bought up by Delphi that continued well into the modern era. In fact, the Packard name was still used by Delphi all the way up until 2017 when Delphi itself was bought out by Aptiv, a venture capitalist group. The museum is more than just cars. It has actually quite an extensive collection of items from the Packard family. The Packard family actually has a very colorful history. Pictures really don't do justice to this custom-made Smith & Wesson 38 from 1910. There's also some interesting vintage clothing here, if you like that sort of thing. In addition to its rotating display of cars, the museum is getting ready for a big motorcycle show coming up. There are a lot of bikes sitting around, like this 1948 Harley-Davidson Cervicar, which is super neat, and also some things like this Cushman Eagle. I like Cushmans a lot. I really have no explanation for that, so I'm kind of drawn to the Cushman Eagles. Hey, so that was the National Packard Museum. Actually, kind of a nice museum. If you're in the area or are traveling through Ohio, it's certainly well worth the stop. Also worth the stop are some of my other videos. If you enjoyed this one, I've got some more. There should be a link right here for some of my other videos, or a link down here to subscribe to my channel. So anyway, I'll talk to you later. See you in the next one. Bye.